أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيبنا حبيب إله العالمين محمد اللهم صل وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. First of all, apparently this is not the last night that we are having program here, because we expected the Eid to be tomorrow, which is not. So probably we are going to, or I am going to bother you one more night here, tomorrow night, inshallah. But I think the question and answer session was arranged to make sure that we do not miss it, actually. So we put it on Saturday. I would just recap what we discussed during these few nights about Dua Abu Hamza and the way the Imam approached Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dua. First of all, to praise Him, to confess his shortcomings, and then to request what he wanted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam, peace be on him, he made, as we discussed, all sorts of approaches to Allah from different angles, from the angle of humility of himself, dignity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his mercy, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his own need, the approach from the angle that he has no one but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if he drives him away, he has nowhere else to go. So all these different approaches were discussed, and then of course the requests. And as I mentioned, there was a long list of requests, both about dunya and about akhirah. And the request about dunya, of course, it was quite deep, it was quite eye-opening for us, actually, what we have to ask for our own dunya, and of course what we have to ask for akhirah. And the ultimate thing that Imam was asking was, of course, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and having in this world al-hayatu tayyiba, and in hereafter, inshallah, Allah would let him and inshallah let all of us into paradise. So this was just a very, very short recap of what we discussed during the past few nights.
Okay, so so this question is, how can the Imam be infallible if he is asking for forgiveness for his sins from Allah? I think it's the reference to the example of Imam Ali in Dua Kamal.
Well, this is a very important question, because we always face this in the way the Prophet and AIM and other prophets actually face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being infallible doesn't mean that a person does not see their shortcomings before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they cannot really do what is what Allah deserves in terms of worship, in terms of ma'rifah. Of course they do their best, of course they never commit any sin, but this doesn't prevent them from looking at their position and Allah's position and seeing that they cannot discharge the duty which is upon them, no matter how they try hard. Someone asked Imam Zainul Abidin, why do you pray so much? You are hurting yourself by all these prayers, night, day. And he said, you haven't seen the prayer of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And no one in this world can actually perform the way Ali ibn Abi Talib performed in his prayer. And of course he was a follower of the Prophet, peace be on him. All these were because when you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when you know his greatness, when you know his mercy, when you know his favors, then a khashya comes into your heart that you always see yourself at fault. You always see that you fall short of doing what Allah deserves, and that's why this forgiveness is always asked for. And there's another aspect to this as well. We know that we usually act according to our knowledge, according to our ma'rifah and understanding, as the same as prophets, imams. And we know that the knowledge of especially people like prophets and imams, it increases day by day, week by week during their lifetimes. When their knowledge increases, when they look back about the way they knew Allah, the way they actually had the khashya in their hearts, they see that it was not enough. They see that with the ma'rifat that they now have, it was just something which could not be even mentioned. So they ask forgiveness for that. So that increase in knowledge would make them to always ask forgiveness for their attitude before that. And this is, of course, the attitude of the angels as well. When the angels' knowledge increases, they ask forgiveness for the way they faced Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before this increase. If, just suppose, we are now fasting, praying, and doing whatever we know in terms of worship. Suppose our ma'rifah increases a little bit about Allah, and we look back. We really see what we were doing was waste of time, was not enough, and we always ask for forgiveness. And this is the attitude that the prophets and imams had.
I've got another question here. I'm not sure if this is closely related to the topic of dua, but I'll ask it anyway. How do we remain focused and not get distracted? And the example given is that when we follow, for example, Imam Ali and live according to his example, then people around us start to pay attention to us. This sometimes distracts us, and instead of falling in love with Allah, we fall prey to the smoke screen of the world. So I think the question is trying to ask how to stay focused despite of constant attention from people.
I don't think if we correctly follow Imam Ali, we would draw attention of people. And maybe the fault is in us, the way we want to follow. We think that we have to somehow stand out if we want to follow Amirul Mu'mineen. That's not the way, of course, our Aimah have taught us. We don't need to stand out. It's all to do with the heart rather than with the outward appearance. Therefore, now, to stay focused, of course, that needs continuous remembrance of Allah, continuous endeavor. And this endeavor is taught to us how to do it. Wake up during the night, ponder, meditate, do worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Try to remember Him all the time. Try to remove the love of this world from your heart. This is the only way. There is no other way. These are the things that we are taught, and we have to struggle. This is a long life struggle. This is not something that we can achieve overnight. So we have to continue to struggle for it and increase our time spent in worship day by day. Not in a way that we stand out, that's very important. The type of worship that you do in the middle of the night would not make people to realize that you are different from them, because you do it in your private. There's one very beautiful hadith about the Prophet. One of his wives was asked, could you describe the Prophet for us? And she said, when he was with one of us, he was just like all of us. No difference. You couldn't see any difference. If we talked about dunya, he discussed about dunya with us. If we talked about akhirah, he discussed about akhirah with us. But, of course, when the time of salat came, we did not recognize him, he did not recognize us. So, you see, Prophet did not stand out. He had a very natural interaction with people around him. If we conduct our life in a way that we stand out from others, that means we are not doing it correctly. We have to live with people, and of course we have to feel the presence of Allah at the same time.
So the question is, how can someone increase their concentration in Salah? And they've cited the example of no matter what we try, like praying in the dark or switching off the lights, where we still find ourselves thinking about something else. Secondly, is there an underlying reason for this? Maybe any sins we have are affecting our Salah. So I think, how can someone increase
we don't need to switch off the lights. We need to switch on the light in our heart. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter whether you pray in dark or in light. If the heart is not enlightened, then the mind goes here and there. The heart should be enlightened, and that would only be possible if we give more importance to Allah in our lives, if we try all the time to have His remembrance and to give Him the due position that He has. As I said, this is a long life struggle. This is something that we have to try to learn, and to also to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to gift us with that. Yes, it's due to our sins, but not sins in terms of the sins that Muslims never do, of course. As Muslims, we never do these sort of well-known sins, inshallah. The sins are forgetfulness about Allah, love of this world. It's not actually sin in the technical term, but it's sin of the heart. And that should be removed. And that, of course, would be removed gradually. And especially asking forgiveness from Allah for these things, that we are negligent of Him, that we have love of the world. Seek help from Him. During these nights, you see how Imam seeks help for these things in Dua Abu Hamza. So this is what we have to do until gradually, inshallah, Allah enlightens our hearts.
Another question which relates to prayer as well. Can we ask for our du'as in Qunut while thinking of it in our minds, if not said in Arabic? So, first of all, is it okay to ask for du'as in Qunut while we're thinking of it in our minds, or does it have to be said in Arabic?
The du'as in Qunut can be said in any language, so you don't need to say it in Arabic, and you don't need to keep it in your mind. You can just express it. Sometimes it's good to call Allah with your own language, call His qualities in your own language. When you want to say, oh, merciful, oh, generous, say it in your own language. That brings more feeling into your heart, probably. So it doesn't matter. And dua in salat, whether in qunut, in sujood, in ruku, you can say it in any language. It does not falsify, it does not cancel your salat. As long as you say the set statements, the set adhkar in Arabic, then you can make dua in any other language.
The next question follows on quite well from that. Can du'as be asked for in sajda?
Yes, it could, yes. And usually in the last sajda, we always make a dua, isn't it? It doesn't matter, yeah.
And can those be said in any language?
In any language, yeah, in any language.
Okay, there was a question here.
Allah is very sociable, I tell you.
If I missed a few fasts because I was ill, then what should I do to make up for them?
First of all, you have to become well, and then make the qadha of those fasts. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. There's another question here. Can you? It's a bit off topic. Oh, well, similar topic. Can you explain why Eid is on Monday in UK and not Sunday?
How can I explain that? Yeah. Well, because the moon is not visible tonight in this area, in the areas which have the same horizon, and therefore it is probably it's visible in some parts of Africa, but not according to the fatwa of many mujtahids. According to fatwa of some mujtahids who say that if the moon is seen in one place in the world, then Eid is common for everyone, like Ayatollah Khoy, Marhum Ayatollah Khoy, or Ayatollah Fazlullah, that then tomorrow will be Eid. Otherwise, for those Maraja who say that you have to locally view the moon should be visible locally, whether with naked eye or with telescope or anything, according to different fatwa. That's why all these fatwa gets very different. You see, some ulama say even if you see the moon with a telescope, it's enough. Some say it's not enough. That's why then the discrepancy comes. And we shouldn't be afraid of this discrepancy. It doesn't matter. I mean, I know it makes life very difficult, but that's how it is. If we give freedom to our ulama to find out the rulings according to the best of knowledge and understanding, it doesn't matter. So we follow the one whom we think is more knowledgeable, and we say, okay, we do it according to his fatwa, and on the day of judgment, if Allah puts us on a spot, we put them on a spot, and we say we were following them. So, yeah.
Okay. This question is asking about how to inspire children who are becoming baligh or have just reached baligh age to detach from worldly attractions and remember Allah more. So do you have any advice on that?
We cannot do that. The children should do it by themselves. You see, when children come to the age of maturity, we don't have any control over them. Then they have to choose for themselves gradually. Some of them are very inclined towards these things. What we can do is, first of all, we shouldn't talk too much to children. This is my opinion. Because if we talk too much, they always say, oh, again, preaching, we don't want to listen to preaching. What we can do is, we actually, first of all, make a good environment at home. Secondly, set a good example by our own practice. That is much more effective than just telling them all the time. If your children see how you worship Allah, how you love Him, how you are careless about this world, then of course they learn it from you. You don't need to tell them. But if our children see that we always tell them, oh, this world is not important, we should always love Allah, but they see that how greedy we are and how careless of Allah we are, certainly they see this discrepancy. So the best thing is that we set an example for them, and then it's in the hands of Allah if He wants to guide them or not, of course, according to their own inclination, to their own choice. This is how things go. Otherwise, there are sons of prophets who do not listen to them. There are wives of prophets who do not listen to them. There is wife of Pharaoh who becomes a Siddiqa. This is how human personality works in this world.
I was actually going to ask a question about dua. For a lot of people, they may be unable to understand Arabic. In terms of your opinion, do you think that it's more important to read the dua in Arabic and really master on how to recite it, or do you think there's a lot to be said about reading it in English, for example, or trying to do both? Like, is there a prioritization that you should try and concentrate on?
Yeah. As we discussed during our discussions in the last few nights, dua should come from the heart. And if you recite a dua in Arabic that you do not understand, then it doesn't come from the heart. Dua, as I said, dua is different from the Quran. It's always good to recite the Quran in Arabic language and, of course, ponder on its meaning in translation. But Arabic language for Quran is essential. However, in dua, it's not the case. The dua, you have to understand it. You have to understand what you say. You have to establish a link between yourself and Allah, and you cannot establish that link unless you know what you are talking to Him. However, when you translate these du'as, there are lots of things which are lost in translation, lots of beauties, meanings. So it is the best way, the most perfect way would be that we learn Arabic and read them in Arabic. But if we do not understand Arabic, just reciting in Arabic is not much beneficial.
This question, what is the best way of continuing the spiritual benefits which have been obtained from the holy month, Ramadan?
Yeah, of course, there should be a difference between Ramadan and other months, isn't it? So this is the month of mercy. This is the month where Allah gives us lots of spirituality and sort of an impetus and sort of push for the next 11 months to go until next Ramadan. We certainly cannot keep the same spirituality as we had in this month. That's why in the dua of that Imam bids farewell to this month, he is so sorrowful that all those spiritual benefits is going to be lost now. The mercy, which is very widespread, is going to be somehow missed in other months. We can use the spirituality we have gained in this month to somehow boost us, our spiritual status, for the next 11 months, inshallah, we perform better. We try to do some of the things that we used to do in Ramadan, especially the du'as during the night. We try to do that. However, of course, they wouldn't be as good as they were in Ramadan. Ramadan is really a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something which we probably cannot appreciate enough, how Allah is opening the doors of His mercy in this month. We shouldn't expect that we will be the same in other months, but we have now stored, alhamdulillah, enough energy, spiritual energy, to spend during the next 11 months until the next Ramadan comes.
This question: if we have prophets, then why do we have imams? Why don't we have only one prophet that does all of the talking about Islam? So a super prophet. But if we have prophets, then why do we have imams? It's quite a broad.
Certainly, at the time of prophets, we don't have imams. I mean, imams are there when the prophets are not there. And that means there is a continuation of guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why we need many prophets? Why didn't we have only one super prophet, as he said, one super prophet that he could guide everyone? Because, you see, there is a human interaction between prophets and their followers. This is a human sort of process. So when prophets preach, human beings receive it. And when prophets leave, human beings should practice it, should understand it, should act according to it. Then there are all those differences, those opinions and distortions, selfishness, and all these things come in, and the word of the prophets get misunderstood, distorted, deviated from its original meaning. This is what happens. And then it actually brings the need for another prophet to come to rectify what had gone wrong with previous prophets' teachings. That's why, for example, Hinduism, they say what was a religion preached by a prophet, but it was a religion of Tawheed. However, it was misinterpreted in a way that then people started to worship idols. As in Banu Israel, Pharaoh of Musa started to worship idols, despite believing in one God. So it is how things get distorted. So there is a need for another prophet to come and explain what did the previous prophet say. Now, with the last prophets, because the book is left intact for us, and that's the Quran. It's left intact. So we have the book. No prophet would come and say anything different from this. So the book is there. We need an interpreter for this book. Someone who gives us the right interpretation of it. And that's the Imam. You may say, okay, couldn't scholars make interpretation? Well, scholars make interpretation is always based on conjecture, based on their opinion, based on their understanding, based on the extent of their knowledge. We need someone with supreme knowledge, with ultimate knowledge, to tell us what is the real meaning of these words, and that's the Imam. That's why we need Imam after the prophets.
I think we only have a couple minutes left, so this may be the last question, but we'll see how we go. How would you evaluate the position of the Shia Muslims in the UK? What vision should we be aiming for in 5 to 10 years' time?
That's a very visionary sort of question. I think if you compare the situation of Shia in the UK now with about 20 years ago, we will see that there is a huge growth. And there are, of course, setbacks as well. Some of the superstitions you see here in London with Shias, you don't see it in villages in Iran or Pakistan, really. I mean, it's amazing how in this modern world we bring the superstitions over from all different parts of the world and we practice it as Shia faith or as Shia practice. This is a setback. But the benefits or the advantages are that now we are open to all sorts of avenues of knowledge. We are open to different communities. We can interact with them. It's good. interaction with other communities raises the level of our knowledge, of our understanding. We learn from each other, other Muslim denominations, other religions. We come into interaction with them. We learn. We somehow rectify some of our shortcomings. That's very good. And I think provided we have a good education and an organized sort of collective work to educate ourselves, in 10 years' time, I believe that we will have, inshallah, a very vibrant Shia community in the UK, provided, of course, those setbacks are also addressed. I mean, the setbacks are like some of the practices which are really disgraceful, and also some of the preachings which incites hatred among Muslims and such things. These are the setbacks that we have to address, inshallah.
I think we'll have to make this the last question. It's a bit of a thinker, this one. If you were to pick a verse of the Quran that you have used in your life as a source of inspiration and guidance, what would it be? And in brackets they've put, not the whole Quran. So,
yeah.
very tough one.
Of course, I mean, the verses of the Quran are different from each other. You shouldn't think that all of them have the same value in terms of giving you knowledge. Like, for example, Tabbat yada Abi Lahabin wa tab, may the hands of Abu Lahab be cut off. That talks about certain thing. And Qul huwallahu ahad talks about a different thing. I mean, there are many differences in these. And actually, Ghazali has written a book called Jawahirul Quran, the jewels of the Quran. That there are certain verses which are like jewels compared to other verses. Because the Quran is a revelation which talks about many different things. Even the ordinary life of the Prophet, the battles, all these things are discussed. So there are certain verses which are social verses, certain verses which are theological, talking about God. There are differences, and it gives us different inspirations, certainly. I cannot say, personally, I cannot say there is one verse. It depends. I mean, you see, the Quran is like a guidance which it seems it newly and freshly is revealed to your hearts when you recite it. Allah would decide, due to your purity and impurity, would decide when you recite a verse what meaning should come into your heart. And when a meaning comes, that would be a source of inspiration. The last verse that really, in past few nights, was a source for my inspiration. It may seem, of course, meaningless for you. As I said, hearts work in a very strange way. Was the verse in Surah Najm, فَأَعْرِضْ عَمَّنْ تَوَلَّى عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَلَمْ يُرِدْ إِلَّا الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا ذَلِكَ مَبْلَغُهُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ. Turn away from those whose hearts are negligent of our remembrance, or turn away from those who turn away from my remembrance. Because sometimes we think, okay, people have different qualities, different knowledge, we can interact with everyone, but suddenly the Quran says, be careful, turn away from anyone who turns away from my remembrance. Have, of course, an ordinary interaction in regular life, however, do not get affected by them. Because the hearts are contagious, like contagious diseases. If you hit a diseased heart, your heart contracts that disease. So, فَأَعْرِضْ عَمَّنْ تَوَلَّى عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا, turn away from anyone who turns away from my remembrance, and do not want anything but the life of this world. And of course, such people are now ruling the world, isn't it? Such people are now ruling the world, are having the power and all these things. And we have to decide about ourselves what to do with it. Yeah, inshallah. Now, the one that I was reading is that can we have another Q&A tomorrow? I don't know. The chief of the session is absent. I don't know whether we can have. Samer, where are you? Okay.
That's okay.
I mean, should we ask the audience if we want to have another? That meant yes or no? Okay. Okay, inshallah, we'll continue this session of Q&A tomorrow. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.